I feel like they're probably making it as big as they can make it for AI 4. Scaling up the model beyond this, I imagine, would probably require AI 5 and beyond.
Yeah, that's sort of my general feeling too. This is an Elon timeline, so I think we should take this with a grain of salt. But it's going to be 10 months between when the sort of FSD version 13 came out, or the latest FSD version, to when we get this. So this better be a good update. And I think it will be, based on what we've seen with the robotaxi service. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I remember how excited you guys were when you got FSD 13. Can only imagine a 10x increase from there. And like you said, Omar, great timing as well with this coming out and then being able to help with the open access, right? Get this on the road in those areas, really improve on navigation. Absolutely is going to be an important one, right? Speed, timing, safety, all those things.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
the car, I mean, my car is able to just kind of do almost every drive. I push a button and it takes me from parking spot to parking spot on its own. So the 10x larger model, I mean, it's almost kind of hard for me to imagine how it gets much better from here. I'm not seeing a lot of the issues that people in other parts of the country are still seeing, but they're really focusing on just dialing down the long tail of safety, just making it really, really rock solid. I think this is really going to help them get rid of the safety monitors. I think things like really rare scenarios, safety issues like emergency vehicles, this is all going to be handled kind of like a robotaxi. So you've never really seen that before, where robotaxi quality software is running on a consumer car as an ADAS system.
The biggest issue I have with FSD version 13 currently is that when you're in like a transition zone from, like, let's say you're going 55 and then you head into a 35 or 30 zone, FSD I find often has a hard time figuring out, okay, how fast should or slow should I be going? And especially if there isn't like a speed sign, for example. Maybe that's just due to mapping issues. I don't know. So I'm hoping FSD version 14 sort of works those things out.
Yeah, one thing which I was thinking about, Omar, is that the areas that you drive in the most is probably one of the areas where Tesla's has the most data from, right? In that California area, there's probably not a ton of edge cases that they have to still solve there. But as they go into more rural areas, right, around the country, around the world, maybe that's where it really, really makes a difference, right? Somebody who's living in like a rural village or whatever now, their car is doing so much better and not having to be careful. So maybe it's pieces like those.
Yeah, that's really the tricky part of self-driving. The whole challenge is making it work anywhere across the country. There is a massive difference in driving environments across the country. So, Sawyer might be reporting that it's having trouble choosing the speed. Well, here where I am in Los Angeles, you just go as fast as you can, and you're really limited by traffic. So even road structures that look pretty similar can be pretty different. And it needs to not just work in the cities. I mean, that's going to be the major focus for robotaxis. It needs to work in the suburbs, in the rural areas, in the farms. And that's really the huge challenge of self-driving.
And inclement weather too, which is the snow.
Right.
Snow is tough.
Yeah, rain, snow, it's handling rain all right. You notice their initial deployments, both for Waymo and Tesla, they've been kind of avoiding the snowy areas, but you can't avoid them forever. A big chunk of the country has snow for a decent chunk of the year. And yeah, there's a lot of scaling up to do.
It's possible that this winter could be the first time that we see at least Waymo self-driving vehicles in snowy cities operating. So it's gonna be really interesting to see how they handle that. Elon did say 50% of the population covered by the end of this year. I don't know if that means snowy cities. Probably not. But Waymo has already been testing in Boston for a while. They're in New York City as well. They don't have a permit yet for New York City, but it's going to be interesting to see how they handle this inclement weather. Because so far, they've really only stayed to sort of more drier or at least warmer weather states and cities. And so they're venturing up north finally.
I'm super curious on it as well. When I first started really deep diving into Tesla at the end of 2018, I would say, was when I was really starting to do my research. I was very much in the thought process that LiDAR was the way that they were ultimately going to go, specifically because of snow and snowy conditions. And Waymo is obviously going to take that approach, right, into these areas. And so I'm super excited to see Tesla do it with computer vision and what that looks like in indifference to LiDAR. One other piece on that, I'm curious where you guys think that they're going to expand to next, because it does feel like they're doing rapid expansion at the moment. And like we talked about, New York already started some hiring. I'm curious if you think that it's far off for them to end up in Arizona. I was actually a little surprised that they haven't done anything, in Scottsdale and these other areas where Waymo really, built that base out of. Do you think that we see that soon?
Since our last episode, I did reach out to the Arizona DMV to get an update on the permit that Tesla applied for, both to be able to operate robotaxis with a driver and without, essentially ride-hailing service with the drivers. And a decision was expected in late July, and I reached out and they said it's now expected by the end of August. And so I don't know what the delay is about, but I do expect probably the Phoenix metro area would be the next target for Tesla outside of California and Texas. If not, maybe Nevada, but I have to assume probably Arizona, because Waymo's already operating there, and it sounds like they're further along in the permit process than they are in Nevada per se. So yeah, they said keep reaching out as much as you want, so I'm going to keep bothering them and see when they finally get their permit, because that'll be a big deal.
Yeah, I think Arizona is definitely one of the target markets. Basically, any place with Waymo, they have a regulatory infrastructure in place for self-driving. So I think they are going to expand into into Arizona. I think that's definitely on the top of their list. On the subject of LiDAR, snow is difficult with any sensor modality, whether it's vision or LiDAR. Some people might think LiDAR is just sort of an easy solution, but the reality is when you have these LiDARs and they're spinning, well, what if they get covered by snow and ice? What if the snow and ice block their ability to spin, right? So you need some kind of heating element. Then the other issue is the LiDAR actually picks up each individual snowflake. It's really that precise that it picks up each individual snowflake as an object. So now you need to filter out the snowflakes. You need to make sure that you're still detecting the cars, but you're not detecting, a piece of snow or ice that's falling. So it's very challenging, whether you're using LiDAR or you're just using computer vision. There's a lot of challenges associated with it. So that's really the reason Waymo hasn't gone into a lot of these snowy areas. I think it's time. They've shown that they can really handle good weather with really strong safety. And, when you look at the crashes that are killing people, often they're happening in the snow. Often they're happening in bad weather. That's when people really lose control. So to really bring the benefits of autonomy to everyone and help prevent a lot of these crashes, inclement weather is going to be a key piece of that. And again, it just shows how early we are in self-driving, that we don't have self-driving cars in the snow yet.
Plenty of time. Sawyer, you had a tweet, if we are able to pull this up, that Elon shared out. This is kind of switching topics a little bit here, but just talking about the demand that we're seeing right now of people buying Teslas. So, partially because some of the discounts are ending. There's a few other pieces happening here. And in addition to all that, you've also been able to have discussions with some of these Tesla executives about end of quarter demand. So we'd just love to turn this over to you to hear about that.
Yeah, so on the Q3 earnings call, Vaibhav, this Tesla CFO, warned people that as the end of quarter draws closer, we're going to start pulling back some of these incentives, and wait times could get longer. And it became clear to me in the weeks after that people simply did not believe them. Because I was getting DMs from people, hey, should I wait till September to see if incentives are better? Because historically, it is true. Tesla offers the best incentives in the last month of a quarter to be able to juice those final minute sales. And so I think a lot of people are going to take that same approach this time, despite the fact that the $7,500 federal EV credit is ending at the end of September. And so I've been warning people, hey, don't wait to order, because there's going to be a delivery hell situation in September, and where you might not even be able to take delivery of a Tesla that you wanted, because there's just going to be a rush of people trying to take last minute delivery to be able to take advantage of that EV credit before it disappears completely. And I told people, I told a couple of Tesla executives, like, people don't believe you guys that you're done introducing incentives. Like, people still think you're going to introduce, 0% financing or whatever for the Model Y, or free supercharging or whatever. And so I told them, you got to do something, because people are just going to wait, and it's going to create a horrible situation in September. And then that's when we saw a couple executives in the Tesla account sort of ramp up their efforts to tell people, look, incentives are actually disappearing. And then since then, we've seen lease prices go up for the Model Y, at least. I think the 3 maybe too. We've already seen inventory discounts starting to disappear for the 3 and the Y. And we're seeing wait times extend significantly, more than double for the Model Y, and some trims of the Model 3 from 1 to 3 weeks to, in most cases, 4 to 6 weeks. So even if you order a Model Y now, there's no guarantee that you might even be able to take delivery by the end of this quarter. So once that stuff started happening in the last few days, I've gotten a rush of DMs from people saying they pulled the trigger. We're seeing people post publicly on X that they pulled the trigger. And so I think people are finally waking up to the fact that Tesla is done introducing incentives. And Raj, who is the new head of sales in North America, he did warn people publicly in the last couple of days, saying we're going to cut the amount of incentives for the inventory vehicles soon. So, get your orders in now. So I feel for the Tesla team. I did get one DM from someone that said that his delivery was delayed because the service center that they're at, or the center, delivery center, the staff was just like super overloaded. They said they're trying to deliver like hundreds of vehicles a day right now. And so it kind of feels like it did a couple years ago when demand was just through the roof. Yeah, there you go. So it's going to be crazy for September. And then it's going to be really interesting in October when that EV credit's gone. How does Tesla adjust its pricing, if at all? I think a lot of people expect Tesla to adjust their pricing downwards by $7,500 because, the EV credit is $7,500. So it makes sense. I don't think that's what Tesla's going to do. I think at most Tesla might reduce 3 and Y pricing by, $2,000 to $3,000 at most. I think in general, the launch of the Model Y L, which I have to imagine is going to come to America because that just makes sense to me. Americans love their large SUVs. And then the launch of the Model Y Performance probably will happen, early Q4 is my guess. And then my guess is another model, a more affordable Model Y, sort of a stripped down Y, will launch as well. So you have these 3 new trim/models, which will help juice Q4 sales and demand, which will enable Tesla not to need to necessarily introduce as many promotions, incentives as they otherwise maybe would have. But we'll see. Obviously, I don't know exactly what's going to happen. I don't know what models are going to launch or when, but that's sort of how I see things potentially playing out.